Hello. Hi, Nick. Hi, Hannah. How are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for taking part in the webinar. So, we're just going to find out a little bit more about you, really, and tell us about your Bcorp story. So, tell us about your agency first of all.
Yeah, I'll kick off with that one. Yeah, so we're Pixelfridge. We're a relatively small design and build of websites and applications is kind of where we sit. We've been around for 6 years. So when we started our B Corp journey, I think we were probably a much smaller agency, sort of 6 or 7 people, and we're now up to 12 people, which we'll touch on, I'm sure, throughout this. But yeah, that's kind of us as an agency, split between 2 different locations, based down in Devon and up in London. And sort of embarked on our B Corp journey about 3 or 4 years ago as a start.
Okay, and then where did you first hear about it? This is always interesting because sometimes it's a client, sometimes you've seen it somewhere. What made you investigate it in the first place?
I think it was a bit of everything, wasn't it, Hannah?
Yeah, in a previous life, I'd had a small startup myself, and we were doing sort of sustainable fashion at the time. And so I was just learning about that sustainability space quite a lot in that world. So when I came to Pixelfridge and we'd started, it was in Pixelfridge's fairly early days, and we started talking about, our ambitions for the company and how we all sort of felt we were all quite interested in moving in that direction anyway. So I think we just started talking about it at that point, didn't we? Because we were looking at ways to sort of hold ourselves accountable and formalize something. And so B Corp was the first thing that sort of came to mind.
Yeah.
And how did you first dip your toe in? Did you launch into the assessment straight away, or how did you go about it?
I think we just a lot of Googling. I mean, there are lots of companies that offer advice, but you can get a reasonable amount on the B Corp website. And I think it's quite easy to sort of kick off the process because it's just a case of sort of, opening an account with B Lab, I think it is, that certify it. So yeah, you can just quite easily open an account, and then you're sort of presented with this rather huge questionnaire, and then we went from there.
Yeah, I do say that to everyone here. It's a free online tool, so have a look. And quite often when we work with businesses, they are sitting at somewhere between 30 and 50 points because they've had a go at the assessment, but they're thinking, oh, this is complicated, or it's a bit more to it than I thought, or what does that mean, or how do I verify myself in what I've said there? So
and I think at that point in time, we basically spoke to a lot of like-minded companies that had this certification already, made some contacts and said, hello, do you mind having a chat with us before diving in head first? Because it is quite a daunting thing, just to sort of sense check if it is something that, A, we could undertake, and B, if it's feasible at our size when we were only, 6 or 7 people at the time. Yeah, lots of sort of talking to people that had done it before was very useful too.
And how long was your process from start to finish?
Oh gosh,
it did take quite a while, because actually that phrase that you used, what does this mean? That did come up quite a lot, I think.
Yeah,
it was probably a year or so, wasn't it?
I think it was. I think we talk about it being 18 months. But that's not to say we didn't. We juggled running the agency at the same time throughout all of that. So I think it was an 18-month, looking like what we've just said, from sort of making a decision on let's go for this through to having the certification. And there is a huge amount of work that has to go into it, but we did manage to sort of keep the agency running and do everything else on top of that, so it wasn't a full-time commitment at that point.
Sure.
No.
And did you involve lots of everyone was involved, or was it one or two?
It was
Hannah led most of it, to be completely transparent. Hannah did a lot of the hard work, but just the two of us in terms of owning the actual process, asking people to feed in as helping to build out different processes that impact different parts of the business that we aren't responsible for, but the majority of it through sort of 2 people.
And when you started it to now, what do you think are the areas of your business that you've focused on improving because you went through the assessment the most?
It's a really good one, because I think interestingly for us, we did it at a very useful time because of the size and age of our agency. We were 3 years old essentially when we decided to do this, and at that point in time, as you all know, you're learning your processes, you're trying to document everything, you're trying to get on top of things. Whereas what this forced us to do is really actually think about our processes, set up an organizational procedures, if you like, from the off. So it was B Corp stamp aside, it was an unbelievably useful process to go through for us, and sort of helped shape a lot of that. In terms of an agency, you know, we were young, we hadn't hugely focused on taking care of our employees. I'd say that was probably one of the big ones that came out of it all. You know, we had such a great team that we really want to take care of people that work for us. And, you know, it forces you through asking you all of these wonderful questions around things that we at the time weren't doing, and since have, you know, introduced health insurance, have introduced, you know, different schemes and policies for our employees. You know, that was a big one. And I guess, Hannah, you might want to talk a little bit about the whole infrastructure as well from a...
Yeah, definitely. I think governance was kind of carrying on from what Nick was saying, like a lot of it, you know, the guys had sort of policies in their heads, and governance is a huge part of the process for B Corp. So again, this is partly why it takes so long, because actually as you're going through the assessment, what's quite nice is that you can obviously save your progress, go away and think, oh, actually, this is something that we can improve. So we'd go away, we'd sort of talk to the other directors about the policies, we'd sort of put something in writing, communicate it to the agency so that it was actually something that we were doing. So yeah, definitely governance for the agency. And I think also digital sustainability, because although it was something that we had an appetite to do, I guess we needed to do a bit of research to understand like how we could actually do that. So we were learning about how we could measure the carbon impact of our websites, you know, how we could start communicating that to clients, putting it into our processes, all of this kind of thing. So although we had a lot of ideas in our head and we were sort of doing some of these things already, but I think it was a case of really sort of accelerating that in all these different areas. So I think to answer your question, I think the 3 areas were sort of employees, governance, and sustainability or environment.
Yeah. And yeah, I do often speak to people about how, you know, when you go for something like Cyber Essentials, you're going for it because you need to have the badge and you've done all the checks. But this is not, it's not a check or a badge. It's like the process you go through makes you do things to make your business better. And I don't think you really anticipate that that's going to happen. But the framework is so good because it's so holistic across those 5 areas.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think it, especially if you're a young business, you know, and sometimes it can be quite overwhelming because you're looking at this huge questionnaire thinking, we're so tiny, does this even apply to us? But actually, it's such a good way of sort of putting some really good, healthy foundations down so that you can grow the business in such a way that you're not relying on any sort of bad business practices, you know, and you're not going to have to sort of U-turn back in a few years and sort of fix everything that, you know, where you're sort of relying on these sort of not very nice ways of working. You're sort of fixing it at the beginning and then sort of growing it from there. So I think it's really effective in that sense.
And certainly because you've doubled in size in employee number. So the things that exist in your head when you're small, it can't stay in your head as you scale. So again, it sort of helps provide that scalability in the framework as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we'd have had to do that at some point regardless. But the fact that we were able to do it and it gave us real purpose in terms of, you know, we're lucky because all of our team are very focused in terms of people and planet as well. So they all align in doing things that, you know, that we as an agency really wanted to push to. And it has, you know, it's led to a lot of changes, but also this is all coming out next week, hopefully, but we are having like a really big rebrand, positioning ourselves, which is probably as a result of going through that whole B Corp process, which is exciting.
Cool. And what impact, if any, has it had on your recruitment in terms of candidate attraction or marketing, or whether people know about it? What impact has it had?
Yeah, probably one of the most positive things I would say is talent recruitment, and attracting people has been a huge benefit. Everyone that we spoke to in interviews, everyone that we've spoken to as we've grown the team in the last couple of years, it's definitely made a difference. You know, everyone says, you know, oh, it's so wonderful you're actually a B Corp certified organization. You know, it does make a big difference rather than just talking about being an agency that cares about people and cares about the planet. Having that stamp and actually proving you've gone through it and we're legally committed as an agency to this cause, then definitely a big help from a recruitment point of view.
Cool. And go on then, tell me some challenges. What are the bad bits?
Doing it can be quite challenging.
It's not designed to be easy or quick, that's for sure, which I guess is by design, because, you know, that's the whole point, isn't it? It shouldn't be easy or quick.
Yeah. I think that the the rigidity of the process, which we all know is changing. You know, the rigidity of the process when we did it was tricky, because it was trying to be a one size fits all assessment, which was impossible for, you know, we were basically meant to be completing the same thing as someone like Danone, for example, would be completing, and we were 6 or 7 people in an office in London, and, you know, there are thousands, tens of thousands of people around the world. So that was a challenge at time, trying to sort of shoehorn our ways of working into the assessment. I don't know, I think I'd sort of say, other than the time you have to commit to it and sort of fitting things in, finding out like details of energy bills, I remember being a bit of a pain.
Yeah, that was, oh God, getting that from the building was an absolute nightmare, because we were in a shared workspace. So like some of the things you just didn't have control over, and you were just having to chase people who didn't really care, trying to get that kind of information.
I've just been with a new client this morning having exactly that discussion, like how are we going to get access to that?
Yeah, it's really hard. But you know, we did finally get there. I think the only other gripe that I did have, which was as you were going through the assessment, and I think this is something that they're evolving currently because they've got these new standards coming out. But when we were doing it, there were some questions where you felt like you were being penalised for something that wasn't actually bad, but because you just weren't, you know, you weren't necessarily fitting the average company. So, you know, they might penalise you for, I don't know, not having employees in a different country or something. All these things didn't seem that relevant, but then you wouldn't get access to this sort of whole bunch of points.
Yes, I understand. If it's not relevant to you, it's unfair to penalise. I get that for sure. I think the new standards are kind of eagerly awaited now. I think everyone really wants to know when they're coming out. So so what tips would you give to somebody who's about to embark on the journey now?
Well, that's a good question. Put some sort of focus time into preparing for it. Hannah did an amazing job as we worked through all of this, in terms of before we put all of it into the actual impact assessment, spending the time to sort of document, write down scribbles, notes, as much as you can before spending all the time actually putting it in. Like preparation in that regard, sort of loose notes, loose scribbles, that sort of thing, before having to auto populate, and just make sure you leave yourselves the time to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think having one person lead the process, but you have to get input from all different types of people. So we had like a Trello board just to sort of keep track of, you know, these are the things that need to happen. Like we could tag people so that they would sort of complete their tasks. So it was just kind of being a bit project managey about it.
It is project managey. I was on a panel recently, and there was a really large business who'd been through the B Corp certification, and then a much smaller one, and they were talking about the merits and not so of involving lots of people. So in a large organization, like say we're doing a workshop, we try and have as many people in as possible, but then, you know, sometimes too many cooks. When you're trying to project manage, it takes forever to get everyone doing the task you need, but then the ongoing merits of having everyone bought in and leading it from within means you can act like a B Corp, live as a B Corp ongoing. So it's an interesting one, depending on how many people you've got, I think.
I think that's it. I think having, you know, you have to have a key stakeholder that can make decisions, like business decisions, involved in the process, because I think the way in which we did it, Hannah did an amazing job of looking after the whole thing. You know, I was involved from a sort of business decisions, and then you can actually go and say, right, should we do this change? And it's like, yeah, that's exactly what we want to do. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. You know, it's the luxury of a smaller company, but even in a larger organization, I sort of feel like if you have one dedicated lead with an approver, if you like, in decision-making capacity, that would be a big help as well.
And then lastly, then where are you in the process when you're recertifying?
Oh, that's a good question. Next year, I think, maybe. Yeah. So I think we'll be 2026, March 2026 time or something like that, which will probably be new standards.
Yes.
Hopefully.
And then your impact report, how do you publish that? Is it on your site? Do you do a PDF? What do you do with that?
Yeah. Currently a PDF.
Sorry, you go.
Currently just in a PDF. Although it has been toyed with if we can clear a bit of time building something online. But yes, currently just a PDF. We release ours every March or April, around Easter, and I mean, it's a really nice way, to be honest, to check in on everything you're doing as well as an organization, because without that, you could sort of get your head down and trundle through for 3 years. But actually it's a really nice way to take stock and make sure that you are delivering on everything you're saying you're doing and committing to. And it's kind of the whole measure and then sort of report on all of that is a really nice process for us, and does take a bit of time, but it's a nice thing to do.
It's actually my favorite part of the whole thing, weirdly. Like, I just think it's really nice to kind of celebrate the wins and look back on what where you were 2 years ago, and then actually realizing that you have moved forward and that you have done what you said you'd do. It's quite nice.
It's gratifying, isn't it? Because otherwise you just as you say, trundle along and you don't realize how much you've done. So wonderful. Oh, the other thing I was going to say just quickly is obviously because of your location down in Devon, there's we were talking earlier to someone about the B locals that exist around the UK, and I was in Wales earlier, and that's not so well represented. But you're lucky, aren't you, down in Devon, to have quite a lot of B Corps?
Yeah, the Southwest is quite lucky. Our office is also only an hour from Bristol, and an hour down the road to sort of Truro as well. So, Devon, Cornwall, Somerset actually has quite a good representation. I mean, I have to be completely transparent. We're not very good at getting involved with the B local stuff, which is something we're aiming to improve. And actually, there's 2 just newly qualified sort of B Corps in our shared workspace here in Exmouth as well now. So we do get to collab and talk about things, which is nice. And we're going to try and do impact reports, bouncing ideas off each other and sort of cross sensing stuff, which is a nice thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, that combined action when you get B Corps together is quite impactful. So
exactly.
Need to get something going in Wales. There aren't enough of them yet.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been fabulous to talk to you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for sharing your experiences.
Yeah, really nice to chat.
All right. Bye.
See you later, guys. Bye-bye.